Yo, how's it going, guys? Today, kind of a video about, some negative things on Hive again. Sorry about that, but I will try to for this one to be the last one. And let me just check if my settings are correct. I have my high power countdown here working again. I thought it'd be a good idea to have it showing for every video so people who may stumble on my Hive account in the future or whatever could see like the progression of my high power throughout my videos. I thought that'd be like a cool idea, or like something for myself to look back towards. Anyway, I had another long discussion today with someone about this kind of like delegation or token holdings for curation on Hive. And I mean curation, of course, I just mean voting, because it's not a lot of curation happening there at all. I kind of wanted to discuss like some things like we know there's a lot of leeway, of acceptable quid pro quo kind of voting. Like, let's say for instance, someone with my stake, someone who, let's say this user Galen KP, for instance, I don't know how you pronounce it. I always think of the Swedish word for Galen, which kind of means crazy. I don't know if he knows that, but let's say he has like, his stake is somewhere around my same, or the voting power is somewhere around the same as mine. So there's a lot of, if I were to find 9 other users like him, I could just follow them or have some kind of list. I don't really use lists on Peaked, but let's say that every day I would log in, I would check what my 9 to 10 friends of similar stake have posted, and I would go and vote them 100%, and I would go and leave a comment, and that would be like everything I do, like every day I would log in, do the same thing, all of my 10 friends would do the same thing, and we would even like leave comments or talk some shit in the comment section or things like that. But what this boils down to is that if I also post that day, and if this user also does the same thing with his 9 to 10 other friends in the circle, it means that stake is not being distributed to anyone else except for these users. And that's all fine to a certain degree. Of course, it would be better for their own investment if they could distribute stake wider. Maybe find other users who are interested in things that they're interested in. Like I'm not, I'm just using this account as an example. But let's say I know he's interested in Lego. He has a community here somewhere. So I don't know, I guess he hasn't posted about that in a while. But let's say that there's people posting in his community, and he enjoys curating such content. So, and obviously he would want like his community to grow. He wants to see more content about Legos, and well, he's not going to accomplish that if he doesn't vote for anyone or reward anyone with votes that's posting about the things that he's interested in his own community. And obviously this doesn't even have to mean, it doesn't have to be like their own community. It could just be content that he enjoys and he like approves of and wants to see more of. But if he's never rewarding such content and no one else is, because if everyone is doing this thing that I mentioned in the beginning, where they're just voting their own friends in this group every day, then nobody who's new or old, but starts posting suddenly, is going to receive any inflation of newly generated Hive. If this user is constantly only voting for the 9-10 same users, myself included, then all of that voting power is only used on these 10 people, which means that 250 to 300,000 high power times 10 That's already 3 million high power of the 200 million that is staked up right now on the chain, I believe. That's already like quite a big percentage. So if that's all only used on the same 10 people over and over again, then no one else is like receiving anything of that. At the same time, we start to notice that, hey, nobody cares that we're doing this, that we're only voting for ourselves. So why should we bother to leave a comment and waste time if no one cares? So we start to not be as engaging anymore. We start to the next phase would be, do you guys think anyone is actually consuming our content? Because lately I haven't really had time myself, even though I've been voting for you guys. I haven't really been able to consume 9 to 10 posts every day, so I haven't really read anything. I haven't had time, but I've still voted for you. But since none of us in the group are reading each other's posts, do you think anyone else is? Does it really matter what we're posting about? Does it matter if we're even checking at the comment section at all, or the responding to the few comments from outsiders we're receiving? And that's the kind of how it starts to become worse and worse. And these users create this kind of like a bubble where anyone from the outside isn't really welcomed in. We don't curate the comments, we don't reply to them. Our content starts to become worse. No one can people stop consuming it. We're still all earning the same rewards every day, guaranteed. So we're growing quite decently in size, but there's no real interaction happening. It's not bringing in any consumers. It's not generating any engagement in the comment section for other readers to continue reading. And it may not even bring any people from the outside in, which already isn't anything that many care about. So my point is, these groups, sometimes they may also get extra votes, blind votes, auto votes from people who aren't participating in this kind of vote trading scheme. So it's something to to think about, that if everyone were to do that, stake would be king. Everything would only revolve around who has the most stake. And I don't know if I need to mention this, but if you were to look at Steemits trending, that is quite literally what is happening every day for the last 4 years since we forked out from that blockchain. Well, there was like a combination of the rule changes of curation, where downvote mana was introduced back then as well. So we had just moved on from bidbots, so I would say before that it was also really bad. But there was like a short period where we stopped buying votes and we forked away from that chain, and then they went back to having everything just be based on stake. And even though the users aren't self-voting, they're still receiving quite large votes, as if they were self-voting 10 times per day, because that's what these groups create. If you're voting for your 10 friends, and the reason it's 10 is because you have 10 votes per day, so to deplete all of your voting mana, you would have to vote 10 times every day. And if you don't have a group of friends, it will become obvious that you're self-voting, your 10 posts per day, or 1 post and 9 comments, and people would, it would be way more obvious to others that, hey, this guy is just keeping his own voting power for himself, not sharing it with anyone else. So they create these groups of friends instead, where they're, so my point was in the beginning that there's certain thresholds of this where it's acceptable. Like, I voted his post earlier, for instance, and no one's going to mind, because it's not like I vote him every day. It's not like I don't even know if I think like I saw one of his votes on one of my posts the other day, but like as you can see here from my I don't know why he's being downvoted here, but it's probably some kind of retaliation kind of thing. Anyway, like if I were to always vote him and he would always vote me back, it would start to become quite obvious what's going on there, especially if I don't leave any comments on his posts, or you know, and if that's all that's happening with certain accounts, you can be like, all right, like that's a bit excessive vote trading going on there. So why I'm bringing this up is because, you know, we're human. Even when we're manually curating, we have our own like judgments, we have our own moods and feelings. Like for instance, if I looked at this account, first glance would be like great content, but then I'd be like also like, you know, it's not really receiving that much engagement, or that the author may not be, I mean, this author is quite active, so he doesn't seem like there's nothing wrong with this author. I would upvote it, but it seems like he does quite well from curation projects and different stakeholders. So my point is that we all have like our own reasons to vote and not vote for certain people. And there's always going to be some leeway where we favorite some authors more at certain times because of self-interest. If I started voting someone new that's a whale or something, like let's say somebody powers up 1 million hype today, and he's like, yo, what's up everyone, I'm a new investor here, etc, etc. If I now went to him and be like, you know, welcome to Hive, here's my 100% upvote, and I would love for you to come and check out my posts. Like if I'm only voting him for him to hopefully come to my post and give me his upvote from his newly staked high power, people would be like, you know, like, alright, like, come on. Like, can you at least try not to be so obvious about what your intentions are? And so, like, there's always going to be some leeway. Like, people are obvious about it in the comments, or they're, you know, like people are going to form their own opinions and judgments and things like that around other stakeholders, and have their own like experiences and memories of what they may or may not have said or done in the past. So that's all part of the game of curation. You know, it can't just be about the content, it can't just be about the engagement, and it can't just be about the author. It has to be like a mix of all these different things, where that's, you know, that's what determines the end result of your pending rewards, what they'll pay out as. So over time, I'm sure we're going to find many users where we think that, okay, this user might be vote trading, but he doesn't seem to be doing it that much. Like, it seems like it's only like a 30-40% of his daily voting power, or 50%. It seems like he's also voting for some smaller users that aren't probably going to vote him back, or, you know, it doesn't matter if they do because they don't have any stake. And so there's going to be like certain thresholds where you as a person are going to be like, okay, it doesn't seem that bad, so I'll just, you know, I'm not going to be petty about this and chase some kind of, you know, call him out on this or start downvoting or something like that. It's unnecessary to, you know, go down that far. But on the other side, there's also some who do it quite openly and obvious, and there's also this weird thing where when they get caught and called out, they go fully defensive. And if you were to be like, you know, like, I can't have you continue doing this because it's not good for curation on Hive, the thing that, you know, makes this platform so special, they're going to be all right, like, you're chasing me out of this platform, so I'm just going to leave now and like unstake all of my Hive and sell it because of you. So, you know, there's some people who they can't just be like, all right, I understand, I'll just start, you know, I'll try curating or just trailing a curator I trust. or delegating my stake out to some curation project, or just some other like gaming project, or some other one of the many projects we have on Hive that give you tokens for part of your stake. So yeah, there's some projects nowadays that are like so openly doing it and expecting that there's not going to be any consequences at all. Like, you can quite easily tell that, all right, the way you're voting is quite obviously automated. You're voting people with, it's not even like full votes. It's like what's it called? There's like decimals in the votes, like 32.75% vote. Like, how did you land on that percentage exactly? And I know Ecency allows for that kind of decimal voting even manually, but like, you can tell, all the votes are landing on the first 5 minutes or something, and certain authors, and those authors are delegating or hold a certain amount of tokens of that project. So if you're like that, being that obvious about how you're spending your votes based on your own self-interest, then I think, people ought to get it to counter that a little bit, make it not that unfair, the APR and the earnings that they're getting using the layer 1 curation system. So that's kind of like my whole point, and I've had like a long discussion here recently with someone who runs some of these accounts that may be active in this kind of schemes, and it just made me want to make a quick video about this. And hopefully, I'll try and make some other videos about some other things here soon. I saw in my recent video that a lot of people were quite interested in some of the tips for newcomers I had going on here recently. So maybe I can share some more thoughts on how things work, and people might learn some new things, even though they've been here a while, or if they're completely new, and if they're in the future join Hive and want to learn more, they'll have a place to go. Anyway, I think the music stopped, or did it? I don't know. I had some music in the background. Hopefully it wasn't too low. Anyway, I'm gonna cut it off here. I'll just let me know what you think. Like, I'm trying not to. I don't want to intervene or do anything right now because I don't really have the time. But it kind of felt like I should be talking more about this, and I would hope, like, we ended on good terms in the discussion with one of these owners of these accounts, and they said that they understood my stance, and that they they do want to change things up, but it needs, everyone needs to change it. It's like, it doesn't help that only one of the 40-50 active in this kind of schemes, that only like a few of them change, because then everyone else is going to receive the greedy delegators or whoever. Like, let's see what happens. Like, it's too early to tell, but that's just kind of, I wish people would respect curation more, and because that's what I feel like is what sets Hive apart the most. And even though it's not perfect, even though a lot of it could be improved, I think a lot of it just relies on how people are using it and the importance they place on it. And even though prices are so low right now that it doesn't really matter too much, I think that over time we're going to feel that everything we've built up until this point is going to matter in the long run. And I would like stake to have been distributed to deserving users, rather than people just recycling their own votes back to them, which ultimately just costs everyone else not involved in these kind of schemes. And some of them were even like saying that they prefer this because it helps people and new users receive some votes at least consistently. But they don't realize that, you know, all the stake that they're using on themselves right now, while sharing some of it with the projects they're delegating to, it could have helped curate some new users who maybe aren't getting the curation they should get. And I don't know, it's just a bit weird. People seem to come up with a lot of excuses when it's about their self-interest, of course. So I kind of still fail to find a good excuse or a good reasoning as to why people are involved in this. But let me know if you come up with something, and I'm here to, you know, discuss it through, unless you're for some reason being super difficult and, you know, have a self-interest in it that may make you a bit biased. Then obviously I'm not going to have as much weight on your words as someone who isn't as biased but still wants to pick up the counter argument. So let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.